Welcome to Cultural Appropriation Borrowing. Before we start, let's have a little reflection. What do you know about your name? Its origin, meaning, and who gave your name? God knows who does not pay. I remember this when I was still a child with my mother. Then I see a painted text at the back of the inside the public utility jeepney. I told my mother, Ma, mali atang spelling. Then she smiled. Sabi niya, hindi. That's fun. Play of words. Now, with our topic, cultural appropriation and borrowing, we can already see how far have we gone. No? How long that we borrowed and appropriated terms, texts, images in our lives. Such as this one. Store names are play of words. And they're progressive, dynamic, and active in Philippine streets, in our neighborhood. Tindahan, store. So it's redundant, but they use the term. The multinational company also supported and printed the name of the store. Living Things Funeral Parlor, Philippine Hairlines, Lord of the Wings, Seven Evelyn, and Egg Sheeran. Now the question, is it a parody or a reflection of our being lighthearted and happy people? So it's a point of reflection. By the time we borrow stories and retell this in a different purpose, it becomes a new story, a new narrative. If we love a particular thing, we repeat it, we master it, and it becomes fluid to us. Then we own it. It is not singing a song from the original. Is it always the original song plus you, the interpreter? There's always repackaging. There's always a association from the personal, from the experience of the interpreter somehow in a different context. So why appropriate? Why borrow? Why imitate? Why acquire? And why own? If there's a balance in predictable or variable music, then it would be easy for people to listen to a certain composition. So the practice of popularity and familiarity is one that dictates appropriation. So if you notice, even advertisements, even during election times, songs and jingles utilizes a familiar tune or composition. And even stories, they also borrow stories from another story. Even in painting and artwork, we also get something familiar from nature, from the experience, so that people establish this connection. Appropriation in non-artists is unconscious, but appropriation in artists, art practitioners, undergoes process, either accidental or intentional. The attempt has a purpose. It is planned and has undergone research. Well, an ad-lib is on the spot, yet a result of mastery. You cannot abstract from nothing, you can only abstract from what you experience. Artist appropriation includes styles, plots, musical themes, motifs, subject matters, genres, etc. So, what is appropriation? It is the use of pre-existing objects or images with little or no transformation applied to them. Either you can adopt, borrow, revision, reevaluation, variation, improvisation, supplement, and so on and so forth. The taking over of a creative or artistic forms like themes or practices by one cultural group from another. Now, that's a reference from the Oxford. But for Helen Feng, appropriation is a manifestation of power dynamics. It can be exploitation and dominance, or it can be reverse appropriation, wherein one will enrich each other by the use of one concept or one theme, one idea can actually improve or enhance a particular concept, traditionally or contemporary. Appropriation in art and art history refers to the practice of artists using pre-existing objects or images in their art with little transformation of the original. It is the act of using or borrowing cultural expressions, and properties for different purpose. But this one requires integrity, honesty, and research and connection with the environment or from the community. There should be a permission, or if you were able to immerse for a longer time, you're given the rights. Appropriation is also the same with borrowings. It is usually used in literature. Borrowings is an older term. Some call it transformation and others transcreation. For playwright Stephen Fernandez of EPAG and MCUIAT, the process of transforming appropriated cultural expressions from their original states to a different state is called transcreation. The transcreated work, having a new life, presents new symbols and new meanings that expresses something different from that of the original, even if we decide to copy the original forms. From folk to the stage, we change everything. We already have uh, spectators, we already have lights, we have already set, and to the extent unconsciously, the writer, the author, even the production group embedded also their ideology, their insights, their opinion. We cannot produce anything authentic. What will we produce is a transcreated work, a new life, which has thrown a new dimension. It is a translated entity apart from the original. So, these are the acts of cultural appropriation according to Young. First is object appropriation, where intangible work of art is transferred from members of one culture to members of another culture. Example, the agong, the kulintang, the kudyapi, a kimono, a hijab, bagwa, the tinalek are copied and printed on cloth, transformed into status, into a new form of art. Sometimes they're presented as a decorative art or an artifact, a kulintang into a Western orchestra, or in a museum, no longer as an instrument, but an artifact, a decoration, a manifestation of power, because it is acquired, it is a collection, such as this one. This is misappropriation, can be regulated or with a permission. Now, this is a ling o from the Ifugao, but if you notice, there's another variation. It can be used as it's a fertility symbol, used as an earring. Some they just use this as a accessory. Even the tangkulo from indigenous tribes are now transformed into a scarf. Though some, when I interviewed some of the cultural workers, they allowed some areas, some parts, some cultural groups in Mindanao, they allowed individuals or designers to do it, as long it is not decorated below the belt or below the torso. The tinalak is supposedly is not to be cut, but in this, there is an attempt of transforming the tinalak into a mask. Now, um, I thought that they were not allowed to do that, but on the other hand, there's another idea or notion that why not do it? Why not share also the craft in the industry as a source of living? So this until now, in this context, still a debate, still part of the conversation. So it is not yet resolved. So it is a continuing conversation and discussion. This is another misappropriation, probably without permission. Imagine a business entity, an industry, tried to name their sandals into a name of a cultural group, the Blaan or even the Tiboli. They actually reacted on this, so but I don't have any update on what was the response of the industry on this. On the other hand, you can see painting here. Uh, it's beautifully done painting. No question in terms of the skill. But we from Mindanao tend to question also its intention because it used a particular garment, but the way it was presented, it has a different notion or suggestion, even the handling of the instrument. So this is a misappropriation of the aura of a certain cultural lass or a girl or some projection of beauty, but in a different context. So it should be discussed and thoroughly studied also, so to the intention of the painting. Another misappropriation that are going beyond boundaries are the street dancing, not just in a particular city, but all the regions in the Philippines. So recently, I think there was an issue that they've utilized this particular important symbol, part of an accessory of a cultural group. But this artistic group, performance group, used this in a different context. There was a complaint about this, and there was a conversation and interaction. But at the end, it was done. The damage is done. So recently, we found out that even this picture was also presented again in a certain poster. So another group of people, these are artists, are starting a conversation right now, no, to look into this context. So this is going beyond boundaries. If you look at it, you can no longer see the traditional instruments in the streets, and it is now dominated by business. It becomes an extension of industry, consumerism, and materialism. So you can no longer hear vibrations from the basic forms of instruments from the earth, but they are now translated into like drums and percussion instruments, which is not from us. It's also from, I think, Trinidad Tobago as a contemporary street art. Hence, we have an insider appropriation. For example, Abdulmari Asia Imao was a Filipino painter and a sculptor. Imao was named National Artist of the Philippines for Sculpture in 2006. At Tausug, Imao is the first Moor to receive the recognition. And by the way, Abdul Imao popularized occur in the mainstream Philippine art. So he's an insider who can also do appropriation within their representation. And definitely because he mastered it and he knows the rules, the sensitivity of the object, and as an art in a cultural context. In this slide, you can see another object appropriation. This is a mass-produced urinal, but translated by Maldus Sham into a fountain, into another artwork. So this is a conceptual art, if you look at it the Western perspective. And we have Picasso is actually utilized the handlebar and a saddle of a bicycle, then transform into a bull's head. So when religious icons from indigenous people are exhibited in museums as artifacts, and art can be an object appropriation. When performers fuse hijab in their performances, or even malong, and even other accent like the tubao or the ukaw. When the American Indian headdress in fashion or sports as a fan mascot. For example, even Miss Saigon there's nothing Vietnam in there. Even Mulan, there's nothing Chinese in there. Even reggae, dreadlocks. So if there are so many subcultures, subgroup of people who adopt and appropriate. Here, a local artist, Krishna Mizabate, used toys and objects to relay its message during the labor exhibition in Holy Cross Davao College Museum with the Kutingong Art Collective. This is in early 2000. If you notice, instead of using watercolor, ball, pen, or paint, he used objects to relay her message. Even Salvador Dali, 1936, a lobster telephone. Battle of Mark, Glass and Newspaper by Pablo Picasso. So this is a collage at the same time. While content occurs when an artist reuses an idea first, expressed in the work of an artist from another culture. For example, the work of Vincent van Gogh, Cross and Whitfield, is the reference of this artwork. When the father of Mindanao artist, Northern Mindanao artist, Ivan Macarambon, so he used a net, a metal mesh, and a black crepe paper, and it is actually adapted from the crows. If you look at it, just like they're crows flying. So the artist also appropriated from Pollack after the crash. So it's another he get this from the story, but on the other hand, he utilized found objects in a university site to be used as the to project this image of death. The third work is entitled White Horse of George. It is a reference to the white horse that took Prophet Muhammad. May Allah send prayers and peace upon him to the Garden of Paradise. This third work has black and violet crepe paper and white plastic horse. He took this from their main door. When Ivan Macarabon's father, uh, they, Papa's diabetes worsened, he had to stay home. Though he did not show it, he was always happy to open the door for them as he felt terribly lonely just watching TV by himself all day. So this is the appropriation. Another is a motive appropriation. Occurs when artists are influenced by the art of a culture other than their own without creating works in the same style. For example, like the work of Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon is actually inspired by African masks. If you can see on the facial structures that are structural and angular. Here we can see Danny Pangan's motif or copy shell or bahay na bato as a motif of his artwork. He is the only artist in the Philippines so dominated with this particular style. They incorporated painting at the same time the craftsmanship or even the capichel, a miniature capichel as the painting, as if the window, the artwork is actually the window and the view is actually the painting at the same time projecting another bahay na bato. Here is another motive appropriation. This is a Sami City tricycad. It's actually based from Makalesa. But there was some time that they were not allowed anymore to use Kalesa, but it is translated in their the bicycle. If you can see the large size of the tires and even the structure, the shade is actually based on Kalesa. Here you can see the work of Christine Guide adapted from Mandala, but it was indigenized in terms of its motive and design, but it's actually the symmetry and the concept taken from the mandala. Style appropriation: when an artist produces work with stylistic elements which are common with the works of another culture. Example, in music, Strawberry Fields Forever in 1967 by Beatles was actually incorporated the Indian music. Joy Yala at ang Bagong Lumad also incorporated indigenous instruments and DIY instruments in their composition. Ukir designs in architectural structures, fashion and visual arts, and even M. English design on his the clothes. These are digital print. In the subject of preparation, Giorgio Lamen's painting was actually um, unfolding the stories of the indigenous people and even the Moro people. So if you can see, the mountains are actually translated and embedded the designs from Tausug or Maranao, Maguindanao, even the context of the 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 soldiers as a cloth. No? It's something with domain. It's something to do with ancestral domain. It's something to do with land. In this slide is a painting, um, "Woman Beside the Lotus" by Chen Yan Ning, but a student translated this into a different title, which "Woman Beside the Lotus." So lotus and the lotus is actually a game, a gamble in the Philippines. So this appropriation provides a humorous twist from the original work. It consists of a wordplay, with the original having a lotus plant and the appropriate work having lotus tickets. So this is also appropriation. In this slide, the original is the Whistler's Mother by James McNeill Whistler in 1871. But during the online classes, the student translated this into Student Suffers. So the artist model is Cadavedo Alenor. Here is an artist from Singapore, a photographer, Eugene So, translated and appropriated Surat's A Sunday Afternoon Land in the island ground of Grand Jate. So she requested either a couple of people or few people, then he edited it and appropriated it in this particular image. These are real people. Now, in this slide, this is the Campbell's Soup by Andy Warhol. It is actually inspired by the popularization of fast food. And we have Roy Lichtenstein's Drowning Girl, which is actually inspired from comics. So literally, in terms of technical operation, they are actually translated in terms of scale. And even Pablo Picasso was tried also to appropriate the work of Velasquez, the Las Meninas, but with a different subject interpretation. However, with a signature after Velasquez. Even Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa was appropriated by Duchamp, by the Dadaists, projecting and protesting on the system. And recently, I incorporated also an interactive play in the social media. So, but this time in a different context, no, with all the cleaning utensils. Even Vincent van Gogh's painting in 1890 was actually based on another artwork in 1872. Even the Last Supper of Leonardo da Vinci was actually uh, different interpretations. We have the Filipino artist so incorporated Jesus Christ with three children, and a common parody is actually dogs, no, in their Last Supper, and even the Benetton also interpreted uh, Last Supper in a different context. Well, the point is, why do we keep on copying? So according to Yoji Yamamoto, the start copying what you love. So you just copy, copy, copy. At the end of the copy, you will find yourself. I think that's the same with even the Chinese. They always love to copy a classic. Then eventually, after mastering it, then they go beyond and explore their own style. Well, the intention is not only to copy at all, but to study and create models until you will develop your own. So, as a point of reflection, through globalized world, there are more opportunities of appropriation, borrowing, and innovation. In this sense, we need transcreation to preserve the context that may get lost in translation or strengthen it because creative production is a sensitive issue. When we attempt to appropriate expressions that are not ours, something is lost or something added. Appropriation is dynamic. Even before the pre-Hispanic period, there's already exchange of material culture through barter trade. Appropriation maximizes cultural exchange and material exchange. So there's a development, enhancement. Appropriating should be dealt with respect and limitation. So culture is dynamic. Nothing is pure. Purists will die. Weak culture will die. The dominant will rise. So it's an interplay of assimilation and survival, or dominance and power relations. So appropriation is a responsible practice. It entails accountability. Artist or not, or an individual or not, or creative production or not, or an institution should be responsible. I mean, ask permission and allow themselves to be involved in a conversation or a dialogue. And they have to ask permission when they borrow something sacred, or even not, because this is their text extension of their culture. So you have to respect that. So you should not think about excessive creativity. Now, freedom should always be accompanied with responsibility. So look at this slide. Is this to appropriate for entertainment or to appropriate for change and advocacy? For example, on this slide, it states there, donate your USB drives, we'll erase them, fill them with films and ebooks from the outside world, and get them into North Korea. With enough USBs, we can help free citizens' mind from Kim Jong-un's propaganda machine. On the other hand, you can see there textures. There are actually dots. No? You can see in the railing. But according to my reading, that this one here is actually trying to describe for the blind people the environment that they can see. So even if they cannot see, by touching the railing with the braille system there, they can actually imagine what they are looking into. This is just a scratch of the cultural appropriation of borrowing. Now, if not, then we have to trace back our roots. Check your neighborhood.